What is up, guys? My name is Cal and welcome to the channel. I'm currently on a quest in Maplestory to obtain the Chaos Reboot set on all of my characters. The Chaos Reboot set is a highly sought after set of equipment that players usually keep with them until the late game. And while I don't plan on bringing 40 plus characters to the late game, this set looks absolutely amazing and I want all of my characters to wear it. In these kinds of video, you're gonna see me challenge the Chaos version of the Queen, the Clown, the Chicken, and the Serpents for tokens that can be exchanged for these pieces of gear. I'll be doing this solo on every character and I'll share my experience with you along the way. Be sure to check out the playlist in the description if you missed any parts to this series, but other than that, I hope you enjoy the show and let's jump straight into the action. Alright, so we're over here in Challenger World. For those that are wondering, yes, I am participating in the event, however, it's at a very casual pace. Anyways, this is my Thunderbreaker. And as you can see, she is also participating in the item burning event. This event gives you the Challenger set of equipment. And as with most temporary gear recently in Maplestory, the Challenger set comes already Star Force, so in this case 15 stars, and then with a bunch of whatever main stat your class uses. Overall, if you're participating in the item burning event, you're just getting a bunch of free stats that will take you to the mid game, basically. Since Challenger World is a brand new world, you're gonna see that I am limited on materials, especially meso. So I tried my best to give every item as much stats as possible, but you're gonna see that some of my potential only have 2 lines of stats, which is okay because honestly, I am banking on the fact that the Challenger set will carry me through the whole CRA, so yeah. Anyways, this is the stat for my Thunderbreaker. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the legendary in her ability, but if you're looking at pure combat power, this is by far the strongest class I'll be working on. So, fun fact, even though I've trained about 4 to 5 Thunderbreaker to level 200 by this point in time, this will be my first time ever bossing on a Thunderbreaker. Yeah, true story. Sometimes when I'm bored, I'll just make a Thunderbreaker, grind it to 200, and then delete it later on. Safe to say, this is one of my favorite classes of all time. Bossing wise, this class managed to impress me even more. I just love how responsive all of their skills feels, especially when you're linking them together. I also want to quickly mention the dash, Tidal Crash. The fact that it's so quick and snappy made it my go-to button to basically dodge everything. Anyways, enough glazing over Thunderbreaker. For the Queen, I mostly stay mid-range to attack her while using my dash to get away from her claw attacks. My first burst took her down to about 70% HP, and soon after, she switched to her love form. Things were going well for me until I tanked one too many hearts, resulting in a death. After that, she switched to her vacuum form. She actually almost got me a few times with a big suck, but thanks to the dash, I was able to quickly escape by the skin of my teeth. Afterwards, she switched to her bubble form. I waited patiently for it to drop before activating my second burst. After that, it was just another round of the love form, and finally another round of the vacuum form before I eventually finish her off. For parry, it was quite simple really. I did my usual thing of bursting him first, then slowly whittling him down to his HP threshold of around 33%. I can't emphasize enough how much the Challenger set carried me throughout these fights. They just gave me so much power that damage was never an issue. This is by far the best version of temporary gears in recent dates. Anyways, once I got parried down to about 33%, it was a matter of waiting for the right color pattern to burst him down safely. Ideally, you would want the red hat blue boss pattern, as that one will give you the most time since parry will be trapped in the spinning animation. Now, I was confident and decided to limit test. When the boss turned red and my hat was blue, I waited for him to do the disappear and reappear trick before buffing up and going in for the kill. Again, thanks to the power given to me by the Challenger set, I was able to finish off parry, but this will be the one time I get to burst during the blue hat red boss pattern. As for Von Bon, he was actually a piece of cake. You see, Tidal Crash isn't the only snappy skill in the Thunderbreaker's arsenal. Ascension, which is their up jump, is also a very responsive and snappy skill. It's the main skill I use to deal with the incoming projectiles, and it's a great counter to the stomp. So, after about 3 minutes of wailing away at his HP bar, I was able to defeat him without losing any lives, making this one of my cleanest Von Bon run so far. Finally, we get to Chaos Vellum on the Thunderbreaker. So again, I am doing this on the Challenger World, which means I have no legions, no link skills, and barely any buffs. I joined a guild to have access to the guild buffs, otherwise I have the red and green monster park potions, the collector's elixirs, and finally some event stats. With that said, surprisingly, my first burst on Vellum took about 13% off of the HP bar, which was more than I expected. If anything, this felt similar to the damage I was doing on the Buccaneer, which means as long as I stay focused and not drop too many lives, I can actually beat Vellum. The fight is of course as intense as it always is. It has me sitting up on my chair the whole time. Tidal Crash was such a clutch of an ability that I would use it every time I see the ground indicator. Unfortunately, not all of my Tidal Crashes were life-saving though, because in this instance, I placed myself in a very bad spot between 2 ground indicators. There wasn't really much for me to do here, so I deserved this death. After waiting for the right time to revive, I continue my assault. Now, I have no idea how I did not die during this clip. but I'm very impressed by it, so I'll leave it here. Unfortunately, my luck ran out on me when I dashed straight into a falling poison puddle, which resulted in immediate death. By now, my burst was coming up, so I played it safe, waited for Vellum to be in a corner, then burst him down for the win. Alright, so this is my Dawn Warrior. Here are the stats. Here are the equipment. Does anybody remember this? Yeah, this is the OG character. Anyways, let's get started. Okay, so you know that phrase, flying too close to the sun? Well, that pretty much summarized what happened during this fight. You see, everything was going pretty good for me. My first burst did a massive amount of damage to the queen, and I did a decent job at ducking and dodging most of her attacks. I died as soon as she switched out of her ash form. Now, this was a reasonable death because I got to cleanse away the fire effect. What's not reasonable are the next few deaths. First, I got too greedy by trying to do a mini burst that I tanked one too many hearts coming from the ground. What made it worse was I wasn't fully healed, so of course this resulted in a death. After I run in with the bubble form, the queen switched to her vacuum form. Now, instead of playing safe and staying as far away from her as possible while she's in the sucking animation, once again I was greedy for some damage, so of course she pulled me in and killed me immediately. Very soon after, I died from a breath attack because what's new? I was too busy holding down the attack key. Trust me, by now I was fully embarrassed and there was really only one thing left to do. I swallowed my pride, slowed it down, and eventually I barely managed to defeat the queen with one life left. Lesson learned here. For parry, it was mostly an uneventful fight. Dawn Warrior does a pretty good amount of damage right out of the gate, so along with good RNG, I got parry down to about 33% in a short amount of time. After that, a quick bind and burst is all that was needed to finish him off. Von Bon was actually kind of the same too. He caught me with two stomps, once at 43% and another at 15%. Other than that, there wasn't really much happening for the rest of the fight. For the most part, I just waited for my burst to be up before going all in. All in all, I was able to beat both of these bosses around 6 minutes, which was on the faster side of things. Before going into Chaos Vellum, I made sure to exchange for the CRA hat, top, and bottom. This is the standard procedure I'll be doing for every class, just to get some power out of it. With that said, for C-Vel, I mostly utilize Dawn Warrior's dash to avoid the ground indicators. Using what I learned from my time on the Cannon Master, sometimes it's easier just to walk away from the indicators instead of jumping or dashing away. I made sure to have Vellum in my view at all times so I could tell whenever he's about to launch some fireballs at me. What I like about Dawn Warrior is the range on Rift of Damnation. These purple slashes right here. The skills gives me great range, which lets me poke at Vellum from basically half the screen away. Now, I got trapped in the corner and tried to dash my way out of a sticky situation, but unfortunately that failed when I got stunned mid-dash by some falling debris and took a death here. It's okay though, that was my first death, so I shook it off and continued to focus on survival at all costs. Dawn Warrior is a 3-minute burst class, so throughout the fight I was very meticulous on where and when to burst down Vellum. I find it easiest to burst when Vellum is in its fireball animation or when it's in the corner blasting the rest of the map with fire. With good consistency, I eventually beat Chaos Vellum with only losing one life. Alright, so up next is the Wind Archer. Here is the stats. Here is the equipment. Wind Archer is one of those classes that I give a heart to. Plus, it has a synergy ring. So this was like the first time the synergy ring came out, so I decided to put it on like a bunch of characters. And Wind Archer is one of them. My favorite thing about Wind Archers is the Emerald Flower skill. This summon pulls the boss's attention away from you, which means in some cases you could ignore certain mechanics. In the case of the queen, I would straight up ignore all of her cleaves as well as all of her directional attacks. You're gonna see me use and abuse this flower throughout all 4 of the CRA bosses. With that said, for the queen, I simply place the flower on one side of the map, run to the other side, and hold down my attack key. Unfortunately, I could not ignore everything as the tick and fire effect was one of these things. Now, Wind Archers have access to Gale Barrier, which helped block the damage from the fire, but it could only block so many ticks, and it's on a 90-second cooldown. That being said, all of my deaths for this fight are caused by the fire effect. For the most part, I tried my best to keep myself alive for as long as possible, but when it stacked up to too many stacks, I was okay sacrificing some life just to cleanse it away. Overall, the queen was not all that bad. I used the flower to lure her away while I'm on the other side keeping up damage, and eventually, I defeated the queen. Parry was by far the easiest boss on the Wind Archer. As long as the Emerald Flower was up on the map, Parry did not lay a single hit on me. Well, except for this one time where I was trapped in the corner and couldn't get out for a couple seconds. For those that don't know, Parry's purple form has 2 moves. One is the big knockback that does a lot of damage, and then there's the ground slap that reverses your key inputs. This was a small oopsie on my part, I do admit. Now, it didn't result in a death, but it was pretty funny seeing this on the replays. Otherwise though, it was a pretty chill fight to which I defeated this clown after waiting for the right moment to burst. So, for Von Bon, Emerald Flowered and Gale Barrier carried this fight for me. Of course, the flower kept Von Bon looking the other way, while the Gale Barrier was surprisingly great at blocking the stomps. Honestly, Wind Archer was by far the chillest and easiest class I played so far, and it's definitely a class I would recommend to new players. Unfortunately, I didn't come out of this fight with no deaths. When Von Bon gets low enough in HP, he will often disappear and reappear with a continuous knockback effect while flapping his wings. One of these knockbacks, unfortunately, sent me straight into a falling clock. Talk about perfect timing on his part, because there was nothing I could have done to survive that. Anyways, I revived and continued my assault to eventually finish him off. For Chaos Vellum, again, the Wind Archer's kit just has so many versatile skills that can help you survive in most situations. The Emerald Flower helped with pulling away some of the spikes, considering that the flower has its own separate health points. I was just glad that I only had to deal with some of the spikes and not all of the spikes. Gale Barrier saw its uses as well by blocking the falling debris coming from the ceiling, and then there's Wind Walk. I haven't really talked about this skill all that much, and that's because I wasn't really using it all that much for the other fights. For this fight in particular, it was my clutch. The I wanna win button, the skill that I mainly use to get the heck away from those ground indicators. With all three of these skills at my disposal, all that's left for me to do was to focus on survival while outputting some good consistent damage. Eventually, I was able to defeat Chaos Vellum without losing a single life. This was by far one of the best CL runs I've had in a while, and that's not something I can say for every class that I've tried so far. Alright, next up is Demon Avengers. Here is the stats, here is the equipment. Now, equipment wise, everything is back to the standard, so nothing special here. For the inner ability, got really lucky with boss damage plus 18, so I'm gonna roll with that. Oh boy, Demon Avenger. You know, I heard this class was lacking when it comes to bossing, I just didn't know the full extent of it. So, straight out of the gate, my first burst on the Queen barely did anything to the HP bar. Honestly, I thought I had on the wrong equipment at first, but in reality, I think Demon Avenger just doesn't really have a big burst, at least for my level. Regardless though, I pushed on as she switched to her love form. I actually missed the animation she usually does to spawn in the mirror, so this is what happens when you don't kill the mirror in time. It's been a while since I saw this, but fun fact, she also heals a pretty significant amount if you fail this mechanic. Now, truthfully, I really wanted to quit and restart here, but nah. I locked in, and for the next few minutes, I managed to get her HP back to where it was. Things were honestly looking up. For the next few form changes, I slowly chipped away at her HP bar while doing my best to avoid damage. Up until I got a little too close during the big suck animation, which led to another death. A little bit down the line while juggling my health to stay alive, I thought I was outside of her melee hitbox, which was not the case, and so it led to another death. By now, I was pretty frustrated by how poorly I was doing. From the start, everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. My mental was slipping away, and the pressure was on the rise. Unfortunately, the train wreck did not end there. You see, once again, I died to a couple of floating hearts due to the fact that I failed to realize that I was at 50% HP for the longest time. Alright, so with 38% left on the boss to go, 1 life left, and with me being fully tilted by this point, the reasonable thing to do was to leave and try again later with a cooler head. But no. If I know anything about myself, it's that I perform my best when my back is against the walls. I took in a deep breath, cracked my knuckles, and proceeded to reach a level of focus that I have never reached before. And my goodness, was this enough for me to actually finish off the Queen. This fight shows that I was going to have a rough road ahead of me. Alright, so before we start, I just want to quickly say, I saw your comments on how to actually say this guy's name. It's Pierre, not Perry. Unfortunately, I'm already too deep into making this video, and I'm not going to go back to change the way I say it. So, moving forward, I will do my best to say it right. Anyways, this was by far my worst performance on this boss, bar none. Up until now, this was always the easiest boss to conquer. So with that said, since my Demon Avenger was not doing the damage I was expecting, I took a lot more risk in these fights, and in this case, I paid the price for it. Right off the bat, I took a couple hits from Pierre's knockback, which resulted in immediate deaths. I was not respecting the red form, which resulted in getting one-shotted. Towards the end, I messed up my burst, which caused him to split, and what made it worse was that I healed one of his clones back to full HP. At this point, I had to leave the instance and restart from here. Frustrated, as I was, I took a break and came back a little later. On the second attempt, it was all serious and no fun. Things were cooking pretty well, until I randomly died to a knockback, or so I thought. Looking at the replays right now, my HP was low due to all of my skills using HP as a resource. In this instance, I should have healed and it would have been fine. Regardless, I try not to let that get to me and continue the plan to lowering his HP down to 33%. Now, remember when I said Demon Avenger wasn't doing the damage I was expecting? Well, when I tried to burst Pierre from 33%, it left him with a sliver of health, and he proceeded to split into 2 right after. Now this might look terrible at first glance, but unlike last time, I did not fully heal one of the clones to full HP, which means this was fixable and the run was not completely dead yet. In a moment of quick thinking, I manually cancel all of the buffs that had any lingering damaging effects. After that, I slowly chip away at both of the clones' HP as much as possible while sacrificing exactly 2 lives for it. For those that don't know, by respawning, you don't get a hat on you for a few seconds, which opens up the opportunity to attack both of the clones without healing them. Any little bit of HP shaved off would be a big help at this point. I had 2 lives left, and since my burst was close to coming back up, my plan was to simply die and stay dead until my bind and burst combo was up. Once that happened, I waited for both clones to change their color before respawning to bind and burst for the victory. Going into this fight, I swore not to let Von Bon take me for a ride like what happened with the Queen and Pierre. Knowing that my Demon Avenger barely has a burst, it was better to keep the consistent damage going on this boss. Something I learned about Demon Avengers throughout these fights was that their range was pretty short. For the most part, I was hugging the boss all the time, otherwise I'm not getting any hits in. For Von Bon especially, this was pretty scary. By being up close and personal with him, you could get hit by one of his stuns, and it would make reacting to the projectiles a lot harder. For this fight, it felt like I was playing on another difficulty, but for the first time on my Demon Avenger, it felt like I was back to form. I was cooking. I was dodging everything left and right, and it seems like I was going to roll this boss until I got him down to about 3.9%. You know that knockback that he does when he's at low HP? Well, those knockback completely destroyed me, not once, not twice, but 3 times in a span of 30 seconds. There was a legitimate fear it'd be that I was going to troll at the very end here, but the fight is not over till it's over. With 2 lives left, I proceeded to keep a max melee distance from him and slowly chip away at his HP bar until eventually I was able to finish off Von Bon. So, seeing that it took me close to 10 minutes to kill the other 3 bosses, I was a bit nervous going into this fight with Vellum because I was unsure if I had the damage to kill it within the time limit. As most of you know, Vellum does not like to stay still, and a lot of the fight is about ducking and dodging everything. I wanted a good balance between damage uptime and dealing with the mechanics, while at the same time, I don't want to be wasting too much time avoiding hits. I knew going into Chaos Vellum that this is going to take me a few attempts. I just didn't know how many. For the first attempt at C-Vel, I got hit left and right. About halfway through my death counts, this attempt turned into a limit testing session. You see, I was not familiar with the Demon Avenger's dash range. It was mainly the reason why I got hit so many times on this first attempt. I also panic jumped a few times, which led to my death. So it was a good time to let out all the nerves. At the end of this first attempt, I got Vellum down to about 49% HP with 13 minutes left. This was a great first attempt. Now I know I have the damage to beat down Vellum, and all I needed to work on was my movement and positioning. With that knowledge, I went in for the second attempt. Right away, I binded and burst, which took about 8% off of the boss. For the next few minutes, I slowly cut away at Vellum's HP while applying everything I've learned so far from playing the other classes. I developed a rhythm while in this fight. I would hit Vellum 3 or 4 times, pause for a second or 2 to deal with any mechanics and or to reposition, and then back to hitting it 3 or 4 more times. I kept this rhythm up all the way down to around 13% HP, which was absolutely amazing. Now, my very first death in this fight happened during a moment where there was just a lot of stuff on the screen, and I just want to get out as soon as possible and just spam the dash button hoping to get away from it all. That was only my first death though, so after a deep breath, I went back into the trenches. Slowly but surely, Vellum HP was going down at a steady pace. Around 1% left, a falling rock followed up by a spike was what caused my second death. By now, with 0.9% left on the board, the battle is technically won. So I revived and took the last hit.